This woman has injected herself with a mysterious drug, and a young beautiful girl came out of her back. Now, they are supposed to live in turns, but one of them decides to break this rule. Let's find out what happened next. A scientist injects an egg yolk with some kind of a yellow substance, and another yolk separates from it. A new star is installed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Los Angeles. It bears the name of Elizabeth Sparkle. This woman is a famous actress and an Oscar winner. Unfortunately, she is gradually fading with each passing year. Her star covers with cracks and stains. These days, good-looking Elizabeth Sparkle hosts a TV show about aerobics, but in fact, she is 50 years old. After filming another episode, Elizabeth heads to the dressing room. She looks exhausted, but tries not to show it to anyone. The woman goes to the restroom and overhears her producer Harvey talking to someone on the phone. It appears that he considers Elizabeth too old and wants to replace her with someone younger and more attractive. The main character is desperate. At lunch, Harvey informs Elizabeth of his decision. From this day forward, she is fired. The protagonist drives home and remarks that the workers are removing a billboard with her image on it. She takes her eyes off the road and gets into an accident. Elizabeth survives and doesn't get seriously injured. She sits in the hospital and cries bitterly. A nurse examines her back and leaves a flash drive labeled "The Substance" in her coat pocket. An elderly man named Fred approaches the actress on the street and claims that they were classmates. He invites Elizabeth for coffee and leaves her his phone number. At home, the protagonist takes the flash drive obtained from the nurse and watches a promotional video for a marvelous drug called The Substance. It allows any person to split their DNA, trigger a process of cellular renewal, and create a younger, more beautiful version of themselves. The old and new personalities must live in a symbiosis and change every 7 days. Elizabeth throws the flash drive in the trash and heads to the bar for a martini. After another glass, she feels nauseous. The woman returns home, looks at her trophies and awards, and smashes one of them. After that, she takes the flash drive out of the trash bag, calls the number on it, and orders this miraculous drug. In the morning, Elizabeth feels awful. She notices an ad in the newspaper about the casting call for a new host for her TV show, and heads to some slums to get her order. She finds the right locker and takes a cardboard box home. It contains a syringe, a vial of a single-use activator, and some instructions. Elizabeth walks into the bathroom, fills the syringe with the bright yellow drug, and injects herself. A few seconds later, the woman collapses to the floor. She squirms in unbearable pain, and something begins to move inside her body. A hole appears in the woman's back, and a younger version of Elizabeth emerges from it. The new girl examines herself in the mirror. She is slim, youthful, and incredibly attractive. She has a beautiful, agile, flexible body and perfect skin with no signs of wrinkles. Elizabeth's new version spots her old version on the floor. To put it mildly, this scene is not so pleasant, and the girl feels nauseous. She sews up her creator's back with a black thread and takes a shower. The girl walks to the mirror and sees that her nose is bleeding. According to the instructions, the new version must inject herself with a stabilizer from Elizabeth's spine. The young girl does so and immediately feels better. The new version of the protagonist is not only very beautiful, but also very flexible. She puts on a bright yellow coat, which Elizabeth wore, walks through the streets of the city, and goes to the audition for the very TV show from which her old version was fired. The girl introduces herself as Sue, and makes such a tremendous impression on the producers that Harvey immediately hires her. He even agrees with the fact that this beauty will work on 1 week and take another one off, as she supposedly has to take care of her sick mom. She becomes incredibly popular in a short time. Her pictures now appear on the city's main billboards, and her aerobics workouts get the highest ratings. Sue strictly follows all instructions and injects herself daily with the stabilizer serum from her old body, which has been unconscious all this time. She is basking in the glory that once belonged to Elizabeth. 7 days pass, which means it's time to switch bodies. Sue does the required procedure and falls to the floor unconscious. At the same moment, Elizabeth comes to her senses. She looks at Sue with interest, even despite great pain. Now the main character needs to live 7 days in her old body. The protagonist stays home and watches TV for a few days, and then goes to the office of the illegal company that sold her the substance to get another dose of this miraculous drug. As 7 days pass, Elizabeth transforms back into Sue. She enjoys her youth and beauty and even decides to do some renovations. A neighbor comes to complain about the noise, but when the beauty opens the door, he immediately starts flirting with her. Sue hides her old version in a secret room behind the bathroom and removes Elizabeth's portraits from the apartment. She goes to work and brilliantly hosts another TV show. This girl is the perfect aerobics trainer. Her body is literally made for those moves. Another week has passed, so it's time to switch bodies again. However, instead of doing that, Sue goes to a party and comes home with a young handsome guy. At the most crucial moment, the girl's nose starts bleeding. Sue runs to Elizabeth and discovers that the old body doesn't look good either. Instead of switching bodies, Sue draws another dose of stabilizer from Elizabeth's spine and returns to her admirer. Only after that does she follow the instructions and brings her old version back to life. Elizabeth feels extremely unwell. She sees that one of the fingers is dark and deformed. Is the protagonist turning into a zombie? Elizabeth calls the substance supplier and complains about the side effect of the drug. Unfortunately, there is no way to fix it. If you upset the balance, the consequences will be catastrophic. Elizabeth tidies up her apartment and watches TV, now featuring Sue. Someone rings the doorbell. It's the neighbor who wants to see Sue. The protagonist doesn't open the door for him. She goes for another dose of the miraculous drug and then heads off to a local cafe, trying not to draw attention to herself. Elizabeth spots an old man sitting next to her and realizes that he also uses the substance. The woman recognizes him as a nurse from the hospital, who advised her to use this method of rejuvenation. The old man admits that eventually people forget that every part of them is important, not only the youngest and most beautiful one. For this reason, the new version consumes the old one. Elizabeth runs away from the cafe in terror. After getting home, she finds her classmate Fred's phone number, calls him and invites the man to go out for dinner together. She prepares for this meeting, puts on a beautiful red dress with long gloves and applies makeup. The moment before she leaves the apartment, Elizabeth glances at a billboard with the beautiful Sue and changes her mind. She hysterically washes off the makeup and doesn't answer Fred's messages. 7 days later, Sue returns. She is full of strength and ready to have another brilliant workout. However, during the aerobics, the girl feels that her body is deforming and escapes to the dressing room. Some strange objects appear in her body, and she pulls it out with her belly button. That's a chicken leg. That's when Sue wakes up. It was just her nightmare. The girl realizes that her old version has been eating junk food in front of TV all week long. Sue calls the substance supplier and complains about Elizabeth's behavior. She is reminded that they are two parts of one person. The girl arrives at work and finds out that the shoot has been cancelled. Harvey calls Sue to his office and offers her to host a different show. Even more rated, popular and cool one. It's the top TV show of the entire channel, watched by 50 million people. Sue decides to break the rules one more time. She extracts too much stabilizer from her old version and lives much longer than 7 days. When Elizabeth regains consciousness, she screams in terror. Her body has aged rapidly and she looks at least 20 years older now. Elizabeth calls the supplier hysterically and they suggest that she stops the experiment and stays herself forever. But she doesn't want to. Elizabeth looks and feels like a truly old woman. She watches an interview with Sue and eats junk food again. The woman realizes that she hates her younger version and envies her so much that she would like to destroy her. But she can't do it. Instead, Elizabeth brings Sue back to life. The girl sees the trashed apartment, a table littered with food, and decides not to switch bodies with Elizabeth anymore. She draws a 3-month supply of stabilizer from her spine. In that time, Sue becomes even more popular. The premiere of the New Year's Eve show, in which the girl is to play the main role, is about to take place. The day before it, Sue notices that she runs out of the stabilizer. She calls the supplier and asks for a new dose of the drug. She is informed that the only source of the stabilizer is Elizabeth herself. They need to switch bodies so that the older version can recover and replenish its supply. There is no other option. Sue grabs the required tools and crawls over to Elizabeth. We see that the protagonist has turned into a decrepit old woman. She is wrinkled and bald. Her body is covered with creepy spots, and what's even worse, she has a huge hump on her back. Elizabeth calls the supplier and says that she wants to stop the experiment. She hides her ugliness under baggy clothes and big sunglasses, heads to the substance office and picks up another package. It's a syringe containing the serum that is supposed to destroy Sue. Elizabeth begins the procedure, but realizes she can't get rid of her younger version, so she stops injecting the drug and revives Sue, disrupting their symbiotic balance and leaving both forms fully conscious. The girl opens her eyes and sees Elizabeth in front of her with a half-empty syringe on the floor. Sue realizes what her old version wanted to do, so she pounces on Elizabeth. The protagonist locks herself in the bathroom. Sue kicks the door open and ends Elizabeth's life with several hard blows. After that, Sue goes to the filming of the New Year's Eve TV show. She applies makeup and changes her clothes, and that's when the girl feels unwell. Do you remember that Elizabeth and Sue are parts of the same person? As a result of Elizabeth's death, Sue's body begins to deteriorate as well. Some of her teeth fall out, then she loses a fingernail, and then her right ear. Terrified and hysterical, Sue runs outside and rushes home. She injects herself with another dose of the activator to create a new version of herself. But things don't go according to the plan. A real monster emerges from her back. It's a hybrid of the two versions, and it must now be called Monstro Elisu. The monster Elisu puts on Sue's holiday dress and a makeshift mask with Elizabeth's face. The creepy hybrid takes the stage, greets the audience, and its mask falls off at that moment. The audience is horrified. Panic breaks out in the auditorium. People call Elisu a monster and try to throw her off the stage. A moment later, the creepy hybrid loses its head. Red splashes shower the entire auditorium. The remains of the protagonist get out of the building and fall into pieces. Elizabeth's face crawls towards her star on the Walk of Fame, looks up at the sky, smiles, and melts into nothing. In the morning, a red puddle is washed off the pavement.